Joining us now is Lisa Gilbert. She's with Public Citizen. She's the Vice President of Legislative Affairs, and Public Citizen has a secret plan to fight Donald Trump, which I can't wait to find out about, and I want you guys to find out about. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
No problem. So first off, you collected 380,000 signatures to make sure that Trump is not above the law. Let's talk about that. So what were the signatures for, and how do you plan on using them?
Sure. Well, it's actually much deeper than that. So it is a place where people can sign up to react if Trump does something that crosses a red line in the Mueller investigation. So we're very concerned that Bob Mueller could be fired, or Rod Rosenstein could be fired, or Trump might pardon key witnesses in the investigation. And so Public Citizen, working with a huge number of other organizations, set up Trump is not above the law to get people ready. And so folks who've signed up there are committing to take to the streets within 5 hours of one of those red lines I mentioned being crossed. So it's a pretty impressive pre-commitment, which we are pursuing at the same time as we try to ward off Trump actually doing any of those things.
And there's some vigils coming up too. I want to talk about that in a second, but let's stay on this plan because I find it fascinating. So you've got 900 pre-planned events across the country if Trump crosses one of the red lines. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's a very interesting organizing paradigm to get people to prepare, to think about what they'll do in that moment, while at the same time we're soliciting their help to try to stop Trump from doing that. So it's been an interesting thing. It just shows how committed folks are to protecting the rule of law, to making the case that Trump himself is not above the law.
So I was at a conference put together by American Promise, another wonderful progressive group, and I was talking to someone about, hey, do any of the progressive groups have a plan for if Trump fires Mueller or does something completely outrageous? Because people should be in the streets, and they're like, yeah, actually it's Public Citizen, they have a plan. I was like, oh, that's neat. Let's talk to them. So it's a good plan, man. So I'm glad that somebody's thinking about it. So one more time, can you review what you guys consider the red lines that would get these launch these 900 events?
Sure thing. So, the biggest one is if Bob Mueller is removed from his position, he's no longer in charge of the Russia investigation. That's a red line. The next one is Rod Rosenstein, who's the deputy AG at DOJ. He oversees Bob Mueller because Sessions has recused himself because of his conflicts with Russia. If Rod Rosenstein is removed from overseeing the investigation, that's a red line. And then the third one, which in some ways scarily seems the most plausible as we move towards the Manafort trials, is if Trump pardons key witnesses. Of course, that would include the self-pardon, but if that happens, that is absolutely a red line.
Yes, okay, great. And then now I want to talk about your vigils. So what are the vigils that are coming up, and when are they?
Absolutely. So next Wednesday, the 18th, all around the country at 8 p.m., we will be standing together to confront corruption and demand democracy. So this is spurred by the fact that every week we see a new scandal in the Trump administration, whether it's Pruitt resigning or the Russia investigation stuff I was just talking about. There's reason to continuously be reminded that this administration is trying to profit off the presidency. So we want to pivot from that, from all the corruption that we're seeing, and talk about what we want, the democracy we envision, where there is not big money in politics, where ethics can be upheld, where voting rights is supported and more people are registered. Get together to talk about all of these solutions and really hold a vigil. There's going to be a visual with candles everywhere in the country at the same time. So hopefully it's very powerful and just reminds us all what we're fighting for.
So the websites are confrontcorruption.org. You can find the vigils near you there. Then TrumpIsNotAboveTheLaw.org, that's to protect the Russia investigation. And then to learn more about Public Citizen, it's citizen.org. So all three of those are very easy: confrontcorruption.org, TrumpIsNotAboveTheLaw.org, and citizen.org. And I love progressive groups working together on real issues that matter. And so I know Wolfpack is one of the many sponsors of these vigils as well. They're involved. That's great. And then TYT, we call ourselves Homo Progressives. So not only are we telling you guys that these vigils are happening and that Public Citizen's working on these great campaigns, but we're going to be covering the one in DC live. So make sure that you guys check that out on our Facebook pages. Whenever there's any progressive event or rally, Young Turks will cover it, and we'll usually live stream it on Facebook, as we will with these vigils. So Lisa, can you tell us a little bit more about, if people haven't heard of Public Citizen, what it does overall?
Sure, and thank you. So Public Citizen is a national nonprofit, and we've been around for 40 years. We have 500,000 individual citizen members around the country, and our mission is to take on corporate power on behalf of those people, on behalf of the regular public, Main Street Americans. So obviously there's a lot of work to do nowadays, but we try to take on these power imbalances wherever we find them, whether the financial sector, whether campaign finance reform, whether the power imbalances are hurting workers. You'll find us there, and we do a lot of lobbying in DC to try to represent regular people to make it happen.
And you take no government or corporate money?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We take none.
Well, if you're trying to fight corporate power, that's very logical, but
yep.
You might be surprised, though, who does take money for and then do different things. But anyways, so wonderful group. Let's just talk just a tiny bit more about if Trump crosses one of the red lines, okay?
Sure.
So what is it that you would want out of those protests? So let's say that 900 of them happen at once, and that would be amazing. And the 380,000 people who signed on to be part of this, or hopefully even more, wind up in the streets. What would you want to happen next?
Right. So, I mean, I think it's going to be a moment that we can barely picture what it will be like. It is a true constitutional crisis, the like of which we haven't seen since Nixon, since Watergate. And so we anticipate, though we've signed up 380,000 people around the country, there will be many more who take to the streets within 5 hours to protest. And then after that, we're going to have a set of demands that we make. At first, we need to protect and preserve everything that was part of the Mueller investigation. We have to make sure we have all the documents, and that Congress immediately appoints a new special counsel if Mueller was removed. Then we're going to turn on them and say, you must hold hearings, Judiciary Committee hearings on abuse of power. And then the Senate needs to put together, Watergate style, a special select committee to investigate what Trump just did. After that, we just anticipate that people are going to need to stay in the streets, and we cannot let Congress move forward in business as usual mode. This is different than anything that we'll have seen to that point, and certainly that we've seen in over 30 years. And so we're going to be expecting chaos and then focusing it on those three asks.
Yeah, because Lisa, when I think about what happens if they don't do anything, so Trump, let's say, fires Mueller, and Congress does nothing about it, then what is the state of our rule of law at that point?
Exactly, and that's what we can't let happen. And so it's going to be incredibly important that although people rally on day one within 5 hours, that it's not just a day one. There's a day 2, a day 4, a day 10, and that Congress really understands that it cannot be business as usual. It is a crisis, and so they need to react as such and take every lever that they have to push the administration and to make sure that Trump is held accountable.
All right, Lisa Gilbert from Public Citizen. Doing a public service because we need to protect our democracy. This isn't about Democrats or Republicans. This isn't about some politician you don't like. If there's an investigation and a president is allowed to be above the rule of law, then there are no checks or balances on what he can do. Then anything can happen, and we've lost our democracy. So it's a super important effort. And Lisa, thank you for joining us to tell us about it.
Thanks for having me.